Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Seahawk Boys Fearless and Not So Stupid Seahawks podcast. Nice to have you here. I'm Mike Barra, your host in Las Vegas, Nevada, Seahawk Boy Mike, as I might be known. And there's been kind of a slow week. It's been not the most exciting week ever in Seahawks history, but I think we're getting to some stuff. We're now 2 weeks away from the draft. Things are going to start to happen, and there's stuff in the news. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is we're going to do a little bit of a mailbag. We're going to do sort of a Twitter X mailbag from people who like to argue with me on Twitter and lose. I don't know why people argue with me because they just lose. But thanks for coming in and thanks for playing. But what's really important is that the Seahawks have had a couple of people in for visits this week, which are very interesting to what in terms of dropping hints as to what their draft strategy might actually be. And we'll get into that right after this. Okay, it was a fascinating week this week. As you know, I've taken all kinds of flack. There's a link in the description. My videos, Geno Smith is not a unicorn. My other videos that question whether or not the Seahawks might be secretly angling to take a quarterback with their first pick in the draft. Not necessarily pick 16, but possibly later picks other than that. They might trade down to 25, 26 and look at somebody like Spencer Rattler. And of course, I was vilified and attacked for it. What do they need to do that for? They got Sam Howell and Geno Smith. Well, if you think Sam Howell and Geno Smith are good enough to win you a Super Bowl, you're bonkers. You're dumb shit, and you don't understand anything about football. So that would make you Dan Viens or Hawk Blogger or Seahawks Retard Nelson or any number of other Seahawks voices that are out there. And it's like, I think a lot of them realize, like Rob Staten does, that this team really needs to take a quarterback, which is what I'm telling you all along. But although they realize it, they're resigned to the fact that the Seahawks aren't going to do that, that they're just going to draft more position players after drafting 19 straight position players in the previous two drafts since they got rid of Russell Wilson. They haven't even touched the quarterback position. And again, we've talked about all the reasons why Sam Howell's not good enough. He's an interception machine. He led the NFL in interceptions last year with 21. If you look at the video of those, they were horrible, horrible, horrible. And I'm not sure he's salvageable. And then you have the fact that Geno Smith simply wasn't good enough, but we'll talk about that as things go along. But what was really interesting this week in terms of a development is who exactly the Seahawks brought in for visits. Matt Gonclaves, offensive tackle from, I want to say one of the Arizona schools, was brought in. I thought that was really interesting because although he's considered a tackle, he's like 6'6", 315, 317. That's awfully big for a tackle. So they may be looking at him as a swing tackle or inside guard player. And I just ran a mock draft simulation over at Sportskeeda, and sure enough, he was there with the 80th pick. And I said, well, they brought him in for an interview. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but they brought him in. So I'm going to take him with the 80th pick and say that satisfies my interior offensive line. My interior offensive line problem. But what was lost in all of this other news is that the Seahawks are, in fact, eyeing quarterback prospects for their pre-draft visits. This is a photograph, of course, of one of the guys who came in. It was Spencer Rattler of South Carolina, formerly of Oklahoma. But just to run through things, Ian Rappaport reports South Carolina quarterback Spencer Rattler, one of the more intriguing quarterback prospects in the draft, and I would say maybe the most intriguing, second most intriguing, is in Seattle today for a Seahawks top 30 visit. Source said he was with the Texans yesterday. Texans are not going to draft him. Rattler has visited with over a dozen teams thus far as teams continue to gather info. That was from April 9th, about 3 days ago now. And then on April 7th, previous to that, it turns out Bo Nix, Oregon quarterback Bo Nix, possibly will visit with the Seahawks Quarterback Bo Nix visited the Seahawks this weekend. Per league source, a Heisman Trophy finalist, Nix passed for 4,508 yards and 45 touchdowns and rushed for 234 yards and 6 touchdowns last season, including time at Auburn football. Nix passed for 15,352 in his Seahawks or in his college football career. Here he is with my first pick, my first choice for the Seattle Seahawks, which is Michael Penix Jr. Now that stuff I found really, really interesting, primarily because as I've looked this over, the odds are at this point, or generally the odds are considered that Michael Penix is not going to be there when the Seattle Seahawks draft at number 16. But on the other hand, there was a report yesterday to the effect that he has not been invited to the NFL draft event in New York City. Now, the reason for that was given by Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio. The reason for that was given as, well, we're just not sure he's going to go in the top 15 to 20 picks. So we're not going to invite him because we don't want any poor souls just sitting there stuck in the green room. And I can certainly understand that. But on the other hand, I feel like the reality is, the situation really is that Penix is going to go way before we pick at 16. Now, if Michael Penix is there at 16, I am going to jump up and down with joy. I'm going to be one happy camper. And if they don't pick him, I'm going to excoriate them to the extent that I can on any platform that I can for not taking him. I think secretly they do want Michael Penix. They did not bring him in for a visit. They don't have to. Ryan Grubb is their offensive coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator of Washington. They know everything. They know more about Michael Penix Jr. than any other team in the NFL. So why do they need to bring him in for a visit? They probably talked to him at the UW Pro Day, and I'm sure they know exactly what kind of a person he is and what separates Penix besides his amazing, fantastic, unbelievable arm. And by the way, let's just take a look at.
Are you kidding me? Michael Penix Jr.
Look at this throw. Look at how perfect that is. That's NFL perfect. You literally can't do it better. Imagine that going instead of to Rome Odunze or one of the other Jalen Cole. Imagine it going. Imagine it going to DK Metcalf, and that's what you will have with Michael Penix Jr. He's a brilliant thrower of the ball. And I want to reiterate again, in the old way of thinking. Hi, Thomas Williams. Just a question of Zimbank knows. Well, we'll talk. Yeah, we'll talk about those on another occasion. But if the standards were still what they were in 2010 for quarterbacks, Michael Penix would be the number 1 overall pick. He would, because back then it was, how do you handle things from the pocket? How do you handle pressure? And how do you throw the ball? All the pro throws you have to make, especially on the outside. It was only when the scrambling quarterback got introduced with Cam Newton, who was a running quarterback, not a scrambling quarterback. Russell Wilson, who was a scrambling quarterback. And then later guys came along like Patrick Mahomes. Everybody started looking for those guys that could elude the pressure and make plays. And that became a bigger factor. If it wasn't for that new standard being set, Michael Penix would probably be QB1 in this draft. There are a few smart guys out there who see him as QB2. Now, why is that important? It's important because if you think about it, he's just as mobile as Joe Burrow. He's just as mobile as Trevor Lawrence, both of whom went number 1 overall. He's every bit as mobile as Justin Herbert. So the criticisms against him are kind of whack. So anybody who drops him into that 30 to 50 range, you're an idiot. And if the Seahawks are sitting there at 16 and Michael Penix Jr. is there, they should not hesitate. They should not trade down. They should not even think about it. They should just draft him. But honestly, I don't think they're going to do that because I don't think they believe he's going to be there. I think they believe somebody's going to take him well before they get there. Now, things happen. This is the overthinking part of the process. All the research is done. Every team knows what they think about every player on the board. And now they start to second guess themselves, question themselves, and think about doing stuff. And this is how they talk themselves out of the easiest pick to make for their team. And they're now going to start saying, well, there's some other quarterbacks in the second, third, and fourth round that we kind of like. And we maybe could pick up one of those guys like Spencer Rattler or Bo Nix or any number of other guys that are on the board this year. And they actually convince themselves that that these guys. Let's go over, take a quick look. Quick look at the. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to go with the top quarterback ratings. That's not it. Oh, that was my latest mock. Where is it? I just had it here. 2024 big board. We're going to go big board, and we're going to go just with the quarterbacks. And what they convince themselves of is that these guys are, 31, 33, 20, something like that. That's not where they're going to go. Their quarterbacks are going to go much, much higher than that. So I don't see any reason, any way, shape, or form that, in fact, Michael Penix Jr. is there at 16. If he is, and they don't jump on him, they're insane. But what I think the Seahawks are doing, I think what they're doing with this plan, what they've been doing with this entire process, is they're under the assumption that Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler are going to be the guys that are going to be left after 16. And they're thinking about, well, do we try to trade down? Now, everybody just says, oh, we'll trade down out of 16. You have to understand, there has to be somebody at 16 that's available that somebody else wants bad enough to trade away a second and a fourth, or a second and a third, to move up and get them from 25, 26, or 31, 32. There has to be somebody that is good enough. And frankly, once you get through the first 15, 16 players, there's not that many. There might be an edge that somebody really likes. There might be an offensive tackle that somebody really likes. But honestly, the quality of players in those ranges are really not that spectacular. I mean, if you look at just in general, how much better is Oli Fashanu than J.C. Latham or Amarius Mims? I don't know. There has to be a motivation for somebody in this range to jump up here into this range and give the Seahawks something. So I don't think it's a guarantee that they're going to be able to trade out of 16. Usually they have offers. Usually they're not accepted. But one of the things I don't think is going to happen is I do not think that Michael Penix Jr. is going to be there. I think he doesn't get past the Vikings or possibly the Raiders. The Saints would be nuts not to take him. So we're either going to have to trade up, say to 9 with the Bears, give up our first round pick next year, or we're going to have to sit and wait and take what we can at 16. And I think that that's what the Seahawks strategy is with bringing in Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler, because those are the guys that are worth drafting in the first round that are going to be available. So, a lot of people criticize Bo Nix. I know that Rob Staten, for one, had dropped him into the third round. People are starting to figure out that Bo Nix isn't all that good. They're starting to see his problems, the issues that he has. Let's take a quick look at some of the things that Bo Nix actually can do. Here's a little highlight of Bo Nix last year against LSU.
How about this from Bo Nix, rolling to his right, trying to get one quickly into the flat, but he keeps it alive. Makes a couple guys miss, buys time, allows his wide receivers to uncover, and throws a strike for the touchdown. How about this from Bo Nix, rolling to his right, trying to get one quickly into the flat, but he keeps it alive. Makes a couple guys miss, buys time, allows his wide receivers to uncover, and throws a strike for the touchdown.
I mean, LSU, you have to understand, LSU has NFL players on their roster. They have NFL players on their roster. And Bo Nix just eluded all of them, every single one of them, and threw the ball downfield for a touchdown. That is vintage prime Russell Wilson stuff. And coming from a guy who's what, 6'3, 6'4, doesn't have some of the issues Russ has with height. So he's actually an incredible talent. He really is. And I understand Rob's, I mean, let's take a look at another video here. This is Nix dropping back. Look at the accuracy of that goal line throw. I mean, that's just, he uses the referee as a screen, falling off his back foot, drills it for a touchdown. Now, would he get away with that in the NFL? Maybe not. He's going to have to put more juice on it. But don't tell me this guy isn't resourceful and can't make plays. He absolutely can make big plays. Now let's slide over. Let's take a look at some Spencer Rattler videos, because actually, even though Spencer Rattler is 6'1" as opposed to like 6'4", I love some of the things that this guy can do. And let's just take a look at some plays. Let's hope this is a good one.
17.
Fades back.
McDowell off the back foot.
Off the back foot.
One-on-one. Leggett.
Xavier Leggett. He's going to go in at least the second round is what I'm going to see. It's a back foot throw.
They said, hey, he had the false start.
Watch
They
it
just
again.
said, look, call it and run it. Same thing we were going to do. Pressure in his face. Rattler does a great job just hanging up there. 17.
I mean, you cannot
McDowell
seriously tell me. You cannot seriously tell me that these guys, both of them, are not legitimate NFL quarterbacks and that they're not legitimate first-round NFL quarterbacks. They both are. And it's amplified even more because of the fact that it's hard to get a quarterback, and there are so many teams in need of a quarterback. So they're all going to go probably in the first round. I don't see Rattler getting past 33. I think if the Raiders don't take a quarterback in round one, if they pass on Penix, they take one of the offensive linemen, which is possible. They may have, Troy Fatanu or Olafishanu, maybe their number one player on their board. We don't know. Number two, number three, and they're sitting there at 11, 12, 13, and they can take him. They may take him and then trade up for Spencer Rattler with the Panthers, who could use more picks. I don't see him. I don't see any of these quarterbacks getting out of the basically top 40 picks. I just absolutely don't see that happening. So, if you go back and look at, I just want to kind of go over what I said on my profile, what I pinned. I told you who my top, there I am talking. My quarterback rankings are Penix, number 1, Jaden Daniels, number 2, Caleb Williams, number 3. Why? Because there's serious maturity issues with Caleb Williams. I have Rattler 4, Drake May ahead of Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy is 7th, and that's in terms of my preference. So if we can get the guy I want at 16, I'm taking him. If we can trade down and still get Nix or Rattler, I'm taking that, but I don't have a whole lot of faith that that's going to happen. I don't have a whole lot of faith that that's going to happen. Sorry, there's my list. So I think you're looking at possibly at 16. If you want one of these top 7 quarterbacks, you have to take them at 16. That's what I think is probably going to happen with the draft, because I think people are not paying close enough attention to what happened last year in the 2023 NFL draft. Let's go back and look at the top of the 2023 NFL draft. And when you do that, what you see is that the quarterbacks went really quickly. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, boom, boom, they're gone. Anthony Richardson, gone. So 3 of the 4, there were only 4 first-round eligible quarterbacks in this draft last year: Young, Stroud, and Richardson. The fourth was Will Levis, who dropped all the way to the top pick in the second round. And again, 30 or 32 picks last year. So second to the top pick. So I think that, and he has fantastic physical traits. The Seahawks should have taken him at 5. I'd take him over Witherspoon. The Seahawks should have taken him at 20. I'd definitely take him over Jackson Smith, the Jigba. The Titans got smart. They have their quarterback of the future. They're going to build around him. He's going to be a fantastic player. All 4 of those players are going to be successes. Bryce Young's going to take a little longer. The guy I want to remind you, I wanted to trade 5, 20, and this year's first round pick for that guy right there, CJ Stroud. That's the guy I wanted. He was my QB1. It's on my Twitter, not my Seahawk Boy Twitter, but my Mike Barrett 333 Twitter. It's right there if you don't believe me. They should have taken a quarterback last year, but now here we are this year. So when the Seahawks are bringing these guys in for these chats, I don't think there's any question about what's really going on. What's really going on is that they are seriously looking at the quarterbacks. People are like, oh, this is a smokescreen. They want Troy Fautanu. And again, I'm going to go back to this. If you think that drafting a guard or any other offensive lineman or an edge like Chop Robinson or Jared Verse or a safety. I actually heard Hawk Blogger talk about drafting a safety. Cooper DeJean, trading down and taking Cooper DeJean. If you think drafting any of those position players after you drafted 19 position players the last 2 years with all the picks you had is going to get you 1 inch closer to the Super Bowl, you're out of your fucking mind. It's not. This team needs a star quarterback. And one thing about all these guys, except maybe J.J. McCarthy, and certainly the guys that are going to be available, one thing about them is that they have star quality. They absolutely have star quality. And that includes Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix, Spencer Rattler, and Bo Nix. I would take any of those guys, by the way, over J.J. McCarthy. I may yet be proven to be wrong about McCarthy, but let's face it, he's not exactly an impressive prospect. So that's where we're at. And I really do think that these visits are a sign that they are seriously looking at doing this with their first pick. And it is the best thing they could possibly do. We don't know. If this was John and Pete, I would be advocating for this, but I would be resigned to the fact that it's not going to happen. I'd be resigned to the fact that John and Pete are clowns. And that's going to be that. And they're going to take a bunch more position players. 19 position players in the last 2 drafts. That's enough to basically turn over your entire team. And we're no better than we were going into the 2022 draft before we traded Russell Wilson. Because remember, that 2021 team had a losing record because Russ missed 3 games. And when he came back, he was playing hurt with torn tendons on the middle finger of his throwing hand. He wasn't himself because of the hand injury. The accuracy wasn't there. And Pete Carroll had coached this team into the ground again. So I think that team was 9-8, 8-9, 9-7, whatever it was back then. Back when we had a real schedule, we only played 16 games. Back when we had a schedule that made sense. The last 2 years, there's been no progress really from that team. How is this team better than the 2021 team? In spite of the records, it's not. Talent-wise, it's not any better. We've added 2. We have 2 stars on this team. DK Metcalf and maybe Ken Walker and Devon Witherspoon, 3 guys. So we got 2 new guys in Kenneth Walker and Devon Witherspoon that might be stars someday. That's it. That's all we got out of 19 picks. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, these guys are the guys to pick a bunch more position players and we're going to get into a Super Bowl, you're out of your mind. Got to have the star quarterback. All right. So I'm very clear about expressing these opinions. And I catch a lot of flack for it. So let's go to the Seahawks mailbag here and kind of see some of the flack that I pick up even more flack because I also comment as Mike Barrett 333 on my other Twitter account. But let's just take a look at some of the stuff that I catch from guys. This was actually a post by Hawk Blogger about Tavondre Sweat, and I said they'd be nuts to burn a pick on this guy, especially in the first round, especially when they've completely failed to address the quarterback situation for the past 3 years. And then this dumb shit comes in and says, we have an arguable top 15 quarterback in the league that isn't even being paid top 15 money. Geno is a fine quarterback for the team right now, and it's the failure to fix the defense that is holding them back, not QB. Okay, let's take a look at that. All right, these are the passing stats from 2023. Let's just take a look at let's start with yards. Well, okay, Tua had the most yards in the league last year. Sam Howell had more yards than Geno. Geno had 3,624. Wow, that's just sort of mediocre. That would rank him 16th in terms of yards. Let's look at completion percentage. Where is he? Well, he's below Russell Wilson. Oh yeah, there he is. There's Geno. He's 18th at 64.7. Let's look at touchdowns. Where is Geno in terms of touchdowns? Oh, he's one step below Sam Howell. He had 20 and Sam Howell had 21. Of course, Sam Howell also had 21 interceptions. So okay, but Geno doesn't turn the ball over, right? Let's look at interceptions. Oh no, Geno had 9 interceptions. That's a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, which by the way is not good enough. As a comparison, Russell Wilson had 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, much closer to a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, which is where most of the great quarterbacks are going to be. The guys who throw the ball more, of course, are going to get more picks, but that's kind of beside the point. Now let's look at passer rating. Where was Geno in passer rating? So he's about 18th in interceptions. Gosh, I don't see him in the top 10. Gosh, I don't see him in the top 15. There he is. He's 17th in passer rating at 92.1, a full 6 points behind Russell Wilson in Denver. And what about QBR, ESPN's ridiculously stupid quarterback rating system? Well, there's Geno. He's 14th at 59.5, and they have Russ down here at 50.7. That just shows you right there how fucked up QBR is. Passer rating is the only thing that matters. But the bottom line is this. The bottom line is that Geno is not a top 15 quarterback. He's 17th or worse in every major statistical category that matters. And he's declining. And he's 34 years old. So as I put it here, he's 17th in basically everything important and declining. He's also 34 years old. If you don't get a replacement soon, we'll be chasing a quarterback for 10 years. And then this dipshit comes in, Rip City Pack, and says, there's not 17 quarterbacks better than Geno. So I listed off Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, Stroud, Lamar, Russ, Burrow, Kyler, Love, Goff, Tua, Dak, Purdy, Baker, Lawrence, Stafford. I put Kyler in twice. Doesn't count. I'm not a huge Geno fan, says Jeremy Schrader, but you did list Kyler twice, and Russ, Baker, Kyler is definitely debatable. I don't think so. You know why? Because Baker's demonstrably better than Geno. He's got better physical tools than Geno does. He was a number 1 overall pick, and he played great last year, and he has experience, and he is super competitive as Geno is. Sure, Kyler definitely better, younger, more athletic. Then this guy comes in and says, his stats the past 2 years are equal or better than Herbert, and you're not serious. Lawrence, Kyler, stop it. And there are people saying, oh, Russ isn't better. Well, I just demonstrated Russ is better in literally every single category. Absolutely every single category that matters in the NFL. So, again, how can you say that Russ isn't better than Geno? He's better in all those statistical categories. So Again, I continue to catch flack. I continue to catch responses. These guys come on and they want to attack me on this stuff and tell me about how crazy I am and Gino is awesome. Well, Gino is not awesome. Where do they lose all that stuff? Okay. Oh yeah, right. So there we go. Um, a bunch of gay stuff from a bunch of guys who don't know football. And that's my favorite thing that they criticize me for is, oh, well, obviously, you don't know ball. If you think Russ is better than Gino, you don't know ball. Well, I'll say this, guys. Obviously, I know ball a hell of a lot better than you do because I understand that the Seahawks are in desperate need of a quarterback. So, to sum it up, I think as we head into these next 2 weeks, I'm becoming more optimistic that the Seahawks are serious, actually serious about acquiring a quarterback high in this draft. And by high, I do not mean 81. Spencer Rattler and Bo Nix are not going to last to 81. I don't care what Rob thinks that's their value. Quarterbacks get drafted sometimes as much as a round or two ahead of their value. Frankly, from what I've seen of Bo Nix, and I've seen Bo Nix play personally. We're down here at the Pac-12 championship game. Okay. Penix was QB1, Nix was QB2, but both of those guys, when I walked out of there, are first round picks. So I understand Rob's analysis. I respect it. I understand why he thinks what he thinks, but the Seahawks may not agree with him. And here's hoping that they don't. So I'm actually feeling today much more optimistic about the possibility that the Seattle Seahawks will do something big and move towards stardom, towards getting a star quarterback for their team. And it's shocking, sad on Twitter are still defending the Matrix. It's like what has John Schneider and Pete Carroll done since we traded Russell Wilson for you to put any faith in them at all? John Schneider was not as big a Geno fan as Pete Carroll. Geno outplayed his pedigree the last 2 seasons. There's no question. But as I told you last year, Geno will never reach 2022 levels again. And anybody out there who thinks he will is a crackpot. Because past 30, go watch the other video. Geno Smith is not a unicorn. Past 30 quarterbacks that have their biggest, best year at 32, 33, 34, 35 never get back to that level. It's never happened in the history of the NFL. And Geno Smith is not a unicorn. So the odds are Geno is at best going to be able to tread water this year. And if you think the stats he put up last year are good enough, I feel sorry for you as a Seahawks fan. They're not. So the odds are that Geno will continue to decline. And Sam Howell is not the guy to step in for him. Not so far. We haven't seen anything from Sam Howell that indicates he's capable of doing it. So let's go out and get another player who can maybe sit for a year. Michael Penix doesn't need to sit. Michael Penix should be starting by week 6 after he gets his feet under him a little bit. Spencer Rattler, Bo Nix, they'll start sometime this year, but let them develop slowly. Let them get used to being a pro. And then next year, you release Geno Smith and you save a bunch of money under the cap. Let's double check that one. You release Geno Smith, you save a bunch of money under the cap, and your 2 quarterbacks are going to be Spencer Rattler, for instance, and Sam Howell, I guess, for 1 more year. Why not let him play his option out at $1 million? Yeah, let's share. just to remind you again, if you go into 2025, Geno Smith's cap hit is an absurd $38.5 million for the 17th best quarterback in the NFL. That's not going to happen. So if you cut him, you suddenly save $25 million under the cap. If Draymond Jones doesn't get the job done, yeah, boom, boom, 2 cuts and you're at $44.5 million under the cap. So something's going to happen at the quarterback position. And you get this stuff from people. Well, we'll just go out and get a quarterback next year. There's no quarterbacks next year. The only quarterback worth a shit is the Texas guy. And we're not going to be in a position to draft him because we're going to be good enough to be 8-9, 9-8, 7-10, 10-7, get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. We'll be in the same position we are this year. The difference will be is there won't be 3 quarterbacks that have star quality waiting for us at 16. Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Spencer Rattler. Take your pick, Seahawks, but pick one of them. Thanks for being here. Appreciate each and every one of you, which isn't very many, but we are going to slowly make traction. Why are we going to make traction in Seahawks world? Because we're one of the few people out there that make any fucking sense and know what they're talking about. That's why. Everybody else thinks that drafting 7 or 8 more position players is going to bring the Seahawks closer to the Super Bowl. It's not even going to bring them 1 inch closer to the Super Bowl. Thanks for being here. See you next time. Bye-bye.